Powered by Go-Goat Sports and in partnership with TSN, we welcome you to Season 3. This is Episode 10 of the Ray Dregs Hockey Podcast. It is presented by our title sponsor, Infinity. We both love driving our Infinity vehicles. You can check their entire line out and book your contactless test drive today at infinity.ca. Infinity, conquer life in style. Lots to get to this week, Ray, in terms of news around the National Hockey League. And we'll tackle all of that coming up in headlines. And one of those rare Ray and Dregs podcasts where, because it's so busy, there's so much going on, we've decided to just kind of dedicate it to everything that's going on. Coolbet Kris from Coolbet.co, of course, will stop by. He does on a week-by-week basis, but no guest this week, which is fine. Again, we've got a lot to talk about.
Hey, more of you, just what we all want.
Come on. Well, and look, I don't think I'm breaking.
When are you shaving that thing?
I was just, when are you shaving? Have I broken a Movember rule? Because obviously it's for Movember, but it's early enough, December 1st, as we're recording. I thought, I'll shave it later today.
You know what, Dregs? I think somebody's going to be really outraged, and I don't think you should care. So if you want to keep it, keep it. I can't imagine Holly thinks it's a great idea. But
lots of compliments on it, though, and people being nice.
No, none of them from Holly.
No, none of them from Holly. I get that. Raised over almost $3,300. So thank you to all those kind
awesome.
To make donations.
Good for you, man. It's awesome.
TSN had a team, so I think collectively we were around $10,000, which was nice. So wonderful cause, Movember. As we're recording this Wednesday morning, December 1st, Ray, we will get to headlines.
December. I said December. Can you believe it, man?
I thought you said it's not December. I was like, geez, maybe it isn't. Maybe you got to keep this thing one more day. Yeah. I want to look back to last night. I don't know if you had time to flip around, but there were some bizarre games being played. Let's start with Phillip Forsberg. By the time he tapped in his fourth goal last night for the Nashville Predators in that 6-0 drubbing of the Columbus Blue Jackets, he just looked, and I'm sure you experienced one of those games, probably many of them at different levels, certainly in the Western Hockey League, but where the puck just was there for you, right? And his fourth goal, he just looked back and went, with that smile, like, I got the Midas touch tonight. What an unreal experience for him.
Matt, pretty interesting time for Forsberg. He's in the last year of his contract. There's not been a lot of back and forth with Nashville yet on it. He's an incredible talent, but there has been a little bit of a rocky last little bit. And I mean, last night on display of what he can do, I had a couple of 4-goal games in the NHL, and you're 100% right. The puck just like falls on your stick and you're like, oh, I guess I should shoot this. And it's in the net again. It's like there's some weeks you go and you never get a chance. And then you get a game like that. I hope he enjoyed it because they don't come very often.
And then you've said this many times, a 3-goal lead is the worst lead in hockey.
Never. How many times last night was it?
There were a couple or a few, no question about that. And by good teams too, right? Like the Tampa Bay Lightning, as an example, they're out to what I think would be a comfortable, if not a healthy lead. And then they give up 4 in a row to the St. Louis Blues. No, overtime one. Or actually, it went to the shootout, didn't it?
Shootout. Yeah, but I mean, okay, so a couple things on that. I don't know if you saw the goals that went in on Binnington.
The one off the stanchion was
one of them
ridiculous.
One of them was off the stanchion that goes right through his legs. Like, that could never happen. The first one was like a ping pong ball bouncing all over the crease, and then I don't think anybody really knew who scored, and then it was in the net. And Tampa's missing a few boys. Yeah. So, but they burped up the 3-goal lead. The one I tuned into that really piqued my interest early in the night was Washington was up. They were 4-0. No, 4-1. 4-1 going into the third. And then all of a sudden the gates broke and Florida comes all the way back and wins it in regulation to Sam Reinhart with the winner late on the power play. And I'll tell you, the Panthers win again. So I think they're 12-1 at home this year. They're doing it without Barkov, who's still out. And they score goals like crazy. Really fun team.
Wait till that Huberdeau deal comes up, right? Like, Is he just having a run here?
You know who's licking their chops right
Alan Walsh.
Alan Walsh wants this one.
And just a quick...
Don't you, Alan? You want this one?
You can tweet at us at Ray Dregs. You want this one. It's about the pieces that you add, right? That ultimately can develop you into a Stanley Cup contender. And maybe it was because they scored last night, but Sam Bennett looks to be a real good fit in Florida. And Sam Reinhart scores a nice one last night for the Florida Panthers as well.
Yeah, I'd say it's interesting to know when a player has run his course in a certain city. And both of those guys were great examples of it. Now, Reinhart had a much better year last year than Sam Bennett did. And, and like Bennett, it just looked like it was never going to work again. It looked like he was going backwards, like he couldn't even play anymore. And then you realize it's got to be something there. He was the 4th pick in the draft, and Bill Zito goes out and fires a 2nd-round pick to Brad Treliving, and all of a sudden Bennett looks like he's at home. And Reinhart looks terrific. Don't forget, year before they picked up Carter Verhaeghe, because Tampa didn't have any room for him. And been a really nice piece for him, and that's a good team.
Yeah.
And of course, they're a hell of a lot of a better team when Alexander Barkov's there too.
We'll get to headlines here momentarily, but quick thought on the Ducks and the Kings game, because that one was bananas at times as well. And a good friend of the Ray Dregs podcast, Trevor Zegras, just again showing that flair, personality, confidence, cockiness, call it whatever you want. But I'm buying it, and Troy Terry continues to score goals for the Ducks.
Well, I did the game on Sunday in Anaheim, and Toronto was just too much for them. Anaheim played pretty well for the first period and a bit, and then it was just too much. But even in that, there was a couple of moments where you're like, man, this team has got some things. Like, these young players are really, really skilled. And after Getzlaf got hurt last night, guys got elevated minutes. And Zegras, of course, makes this circus play that doesn't result in a goal. Terry scores a beauty. Anaheim's way up, and then they're not way up. It's 4-4. Dustin Brown with a goal to tie it up, and then it goes all the way to the shooter, and they end up, Anaheim wins the 2 points. LA's really hit the skids a little bit here, but a lot of times those Anaheim LA games are really fun. Well,
speaking of LA, we're going to talk about Brendan Lemieux as part of headlines here in just a second. We asked a quartermark poll question on the weekend on Ray and Dregs Twitter, presented by Canadian Club, and we asked which of the 4 leaders in each division by points percentage had the best chance to lift the Stanley Cup. So the options were the Carolina Hurricanes, the Florida Panthers, Minnesota Wild, and Edmonton Oilers. I think you're going to get this one. I don't know if you paid close attention to the poll results as they were being tabulated, right?
I didn't see it, no.
What would be your guess between Carolina, Florida, Edmonton, and Minnie? Who would lead the pack?
Edmonton.
Okay. Edmonton is actually third in the poll results at 23.3%. Really? Yeah. No love for the Minnesota Wild. For our pal Dean Evison, Billy Guerin, 4.8% chance of winning the Cup, according to those who responded.
You know what I can't believe when I think of the Wild? Have you seen how many goals they scored?
I know.
Where did that come from?
And well, it's.
I mean, of course, Kaprizov.
But they're doing it by committee too, right? It's not just.
Who's a hell of a player there is Joel Eriksson Ek. He was a first rounder a few years ago, man. He's.
What do you think becomes a Kevin Fiala?
Player.
Is he going to work his way out of the doghouse? I mean, he's a good player.
He is a good player, but the thing is, if they can't make it work there, he's also going to fetch a good player. The one thing about Fiala, he's got like standout talent, but this has been his pattern, right? Like it doesn't stay for a consistently long period of time. But when he gets hot, man, look out.
Oh, I know. Well, maybe there's a connection to Jake DeBrusk and the Boston Bruins, which would be part of our headlines as well. And I don't know that there is, but Billy Guerin is an active GM, so that could be an element, a component. Carolina, by the way, 39.4% of the people who answered the poll say they will hoist the cup, followed by Florida at 32.5%, and the Edmonton Oilers at 23.3%, Mini at 4.8%. There you go.
Yeah, I'm watching Florida. I mean, they got to find a way to be a little more stingy, I think. Yeah. Carolina's got the team that doesn't really give up a whole lot. Like last night, they lost, I think, 3-1. They gave up 15 shots. You know, like they don't give up anything.
Yeah. How about Brind'Amour?
They're dangerous.
How about Rod Brind'Amour not backing off a little bit? My love for this man grows every single day, because for anybody who's wondering why I'm saying this, he was fined $25,000 for going after the refs, right? And I guess in October, there was a memo sent out that coaches, managers, you're on alert. If you go after the officials, if you question the credibility, if you embarrass the National Hockey League, you're going to get slapped with a $25,000 fine. So Rod gets fined $25K for yelling at the officials. Don't know what he said. I didn't hear it. I just saw it. And you can see he's very demonstrative in his level of frustration. Yeah. But he did not back down a notch afterwards and just saying, I think it's wrong. But whatever, let's move on.
Well, but here's the thing. They've already fined him.
Yeah, what are they going to fine him another 25?
They're not going to do that. And I don't know. It wasn't that bad, in my opinion. But wallet's a little lighter.
One of the best ones for me, and we'll move on here, is Paul Maurice a bunch of years ago. And it's a meme or a GIF, call it whatever you will, where he says, F you, and F you too. Yeah. Remember?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He gets so every official on the ice, and he doesn't stop. It is so good. All right, Ray, headlines presented by our friends at Boston Pizza, just in time for the holidays. From now until the end of the year, you get a free $10 promo card when you buy a $50 Boston Pizza gift card. And what better gift than a $50 Boston Pizza gift card? Let's start with the big suspension of the week. Brendan Lemieux of the Los Angeles Kings gets 5 games for biting Brady Tkachuk of the Ottawa Senators. Now, I think the majority of media fans, analysts like yourself, would think it's a bit light. I thought it'd be in the 7 to 10 range, but I was wrong in assuming that the Department of Player Safety legitimately had the video evidence to show that he bit Brady Tkachuk, other than Brady, of course, acknowledging that he'd been bitten, and the hand. I mean, there was a wound there. So is 5 games about right or light for you?
No, I wanted it to be more, just on the principle of general stupidity. It's got zero place around the game. Like, how many times do we hear from Department of Player Safety when they say it's a hockey play?
Yeah.
That was a hockey play. Well, that's not a hockey play. That's something that, as Brady Tkachuk said, 3-year-olds do. Or maybe I'm paraphrasing, putting the age in there. His dad got suspended for biting too, right?
Yeah, Jim Paplinsky.
And I think the phrase is, but I'm going to paraphrase again, it's a drop off the old cement, chip off the old cement. I mean, like, the two of them, like, seriously, it's just not part of anything. I wanted 7 or 8, Dregs.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess 5 is a message to everybody, but when you think of it, like, how often does it happen?
Yeah.
Like, not very often. So my main critique is, I always think player safety suspends too light. I don't think they suspend with a punitive enough view.
Yeah.
So I'm always on the side. I would rather see more than less games.
Well, and just a quick add on to all of that. I understand how the Los Angeles Kings would go into an in-person hearing and defend Brendan Lemieux. That's the job of management. That's the job of the agent. The Players Association, though, this is always that delicate balance, right? They don't just represent Brendan Lemieux in this in-person hearing. They also represent Brady Tkachuk, who was victimized in this case.
And I think they do a terrible job of it. Yeah. They always defend the perpetrator.
Yeah.
They never defend the guy that just got elbowed in the face or the guy that just got bit. In my opinion, I don't I don't think there is a balance. I think the view is that it's like a court of law and they're the defense attorney. Well, the problem is the guy you're defending did something to someone else who also pays your union dues.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like it.
No. Brad Marchand gets 3 games for slew footing,
Yep.
and mention Rod Brind'Amour and just how I like the fact he didn't back down after getting the $25,000 fine for yipping at the officials. Brad Marchand not backing down either, just saying, look, I think I've changed my game. I think I've changed my approach, and that isn't being recognized by the National Hockey League. So that's his defense.
Right.
For me, this is a textbook slew foot. So he needed to get something. And I don't know that 3 games is an extension of past indiscretions or not. So for me, he needed to get suspended.
I agree with both those statements. A, that he has changed his game and he has stayed out of the muck pretty much for a few years. Now, he's close to $1 million in fines. How about that? Just
That's
astounding.
A lot, man.
So I acknowledge, yes, absolutely. He has tried, and he's done a really good job of changing a lot of the shenanigans that went on around him. The second part is he deserved to be suspended. But if I were Marchand, what would really piss me off is that PK Subban did it twice and got fined twice.
Yeah.
Like the lack of consistency in just those 3 plays, I think is pretty. It's pretty much an example of the frustrations people have with the department. Subban should have been suspended. If he got fined the first time, the second time, you don't get fined again. You get suspended.
Mm-hmm.
And again, if I were Marchand, that would bug me.
The Montreal Canadiens clean house. Man, what a mammoth story this turned out to be over the course of the weekend. And the media is happy in Montreal. Around the league, we've heard from the owner, Jeff Molson, who explained why he took his time in this process. And in fairness, part of it had to do with Marc Bergevin having COVID. So he wanted him to get healthy again. But Berge is out. Trevor Timmins, he's out. Scott Mellenby resigned. He's out. Paul Wilson, who's head of communications with the Montreal Canadiens, deeply aligned with Marc Bergevin, he's out. And that now leaves us with, an opportunity for somebody who probably doesn't have the experience that normally would be required to get an NHL general manager's job. They hired Jeff Gorton as the overseer of hockey operations, and they acknowledge that the general manager has to be, appreciably, understandably, has to be French speaking. So when you look at, first of all, your thoughts on the changes, and then I'll throw out some names and you can respond to that. Any of this surprising, starting with Berge being let go and others?
Oh, I don't think so. It seemed like, he was headed that way himself.
Yeah.
Otherwise they probably would have come to, to some agreement, in the past few months. It would wear on you. I mean, I was around an event a couple of weeks ago, and there were a few general managers there. And at the event, they're all watching their phone to see how their team is doing on that particular night. Like they can't even put it away for 20 minutes. Yeah. Like the stress on them was quite evident. So I wasn't surprised that house cleaning was done. Mainly because it seemed like Marc Bergevin was headed towards that way anyway. Right. Through the Logan Mailloux draft and how that was handled, that was going to happen all at once too. Yeah. And so now you've got a chance to make a cleaner slate. So, they hired Jeff Gorton. He's got a 5-year deal. I assume he's not making 23 cents, right? Like he's got an impactful position there.
Yeah.
So whomever is brought in, and we'll get to that in a second, there has to be some sort of synergy in the view of the new GM and the president, which is Jeff Gorton. There has to be. Otherwise, that thing's going to blow up in 4 months.
Yeah. So I will throw some names at you. Some of the most obvious include Matt Darch, who's part of the management group of the Tampa Bay Lightning, has had success with Julien Brisebois. I like the path of Matt Darche because when he left hockey, I mean, he went into the workforce, right? You know, he didn't dive right into a management group. You know, he worked for, I think, an investment firm. But, man, he had to go to work every day. You know, he had to earn a paycheck. He had to put food on the table. You know, then he morphs back into hockey and, again, has had a level of success, a high level, the highest level of success with the Tampa Bay Lightning. So, interesting, intriguing name. But there are others. And maybe you go with the star factor. You know, Roberto Luongo, working hard with the Florida Panthers. Is he ready to be a GM? Maybe under the tutelage of Jeff Gordon. Danny Briere in the East Coast Hockey League. Again, a bit of star factor there, right? In Briere and Roberto Luongo. And another name that surfaced in the last couple of days is Marty Lapointe. So not suggesting those four are the only four candidates, but because you're French speaking, you know, there's a connection. So who among that group kind of jumps off the page for you?
Well, I'm going to say Luongo is going to be fourth for me.
Okay. Yeah.
If only because they have long talked about their want and desire to live in Florida.
Yeah.
You know, obviously that's not just a job change. That's a life change.
Right.
Do the Luongos want to move to Montreal and all that goes with it? Or is he on a better path right now to stay in Florida? I mean, I have no idea, but that was my first thought when Roberto's name popped up. I don't, you have to really consider how each of these people would be in working with Jeff Gordon and how that might be. What about Martin Madden as well?
Another name
in Anaheim.
Yeah.
Now Martin would be the most experienced and maybe the lowest profile,
right,
of the group. The one that sticks out for me though is Matthew Darche right now.
Yeah.
Only because I think he's further along in the management tree of experience, working for Julien Brisebois in Tampa than Danny Briere. I would have Briere next.
Okay.
And then Marty Lapointe.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating dynamic. The only way it really works, again, I'll say it for the third time, is if whomever the general manager is and Jeff Gordon are able to work in concert. It doesn't mean they got to agree on everything, Dregs. I think that's, you know, this will be written or talked about as, they have to agree on every decision. No, they don't. But they have to be able to respect each other and come to a consensus on a decision. To me, it's another voice in the hockey department. It's like having four assistant GMs and a GM.
Yeah.
Eventually, you've got to come to a consensus, and the GM signs off on it. And maybe that's what's going to happen here. But there's got to be a respect as you work through whatever that process is of the decision you're making of the day.
Are you buying into a rebuild? And if you are, what does that mean for Carey Price, for Brendan Gallagher, for Josh Anderson, for Toffoli? You know, those type of players.
I don't think their team can really rebuild with the years and dollars committed to the people they have committed to them. You know, Gallagher's starting a 6-year contract. He's just starting it. Toffoli's got 3, Anderson's got 6, Armia's got 4, Suzuki's got 8, but you know, he's young. Yeah. Petrie's got 4, Savard's got 4, Price has got 5. How are you rebuilding that?
Can't.
You've got to run some years off that. So call it whatever you want, but they've got to try and get a little quicker, a little more polished around these players. The center ice position for them is not good enough.
It's not, no.
And so until they can fix that, that's an issue. Their blue line, I mean, without Weber, I mean, it looks pretty ordinary, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm. It does.
And then with whatever Carey Price's situation is going to be coming down the line here, rebuild, no. They can say they'll spend whatever money they want, but you can only take so much money back in contracts. You still got to field the team. I think an adjustment on the fly is the best they got.
Yeah, we'll continue the analysis, obviously, of the Montreal Canadiens in future episodes because they need to hire a general manager, and
it's going to be fascinating, Dregs. It really is.
It really is for so many different reasons, but they're on their way. Where they're headed, we're not quite sure yet, but they've certainly embraced change. Okay, speaking of change, Jake DeBrusk, 25-year-old forward for the Boston Bruins, fed up, has had enough. Just doesn't like the fact he's not playing, was a healthy scratch recently, thrown into the lineup because Marchand suspended. They've got COVID in Providence in the American League. So Bruce Cassidy had to put him back into the mix on Tuesday night. What should the market be, Ray, for Jake DeBrusk? The stat that jumps off the page for me, 16 playoff goals. This kid has a history of being a postseason performer, but he hasn't performed recently.
Yeah, the price for DeBrusk is really interesting because you see 27 goals and 19 goals in his first couple of years. You see the 16 playoff goals. Can you think of the one common factor there? David Krejci.
Yeah.
So if you acquire Jake DeBrusk and put him alongside not David Krejci, are you getting that production?
Mm-hmm.
What a phenomenal passer of the puck Krejci was.
Yeah.
Hold the puck till you get open and then zap, it's on your tape, right? And DeBrusk finished.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he's lost his way. Clearly, he and Bruce Cassidy do not see eye to eye.
Yeah.
If there would be, somewhere along the line, there would be a reinvigorated Jake DeBrusk. So they got to try and trade a depressed asset. Now, you brought up Kevin Fiala before.
Yeah.
Maybe is that in some way, shape, or form a deal that could be worked upon?
Yeah.
Maybe. Would Vancouver get involved?
They're interested. The Canucks are interested. I know that.
Yeah. Well, what do you want to trade?
Yeah.
Like you got to have something to trade back.
Right.
And so it becomes a tricky one. I think, Dregs, you'd maybe know better. Does DeBrusk have one more year left?
Let me check. Or is this the final year? He'd signed the 2-year.
Right. I know he's near the end of it. And so that wouldn't be, it's not like he's got 3 or 4 years left on his deal that would be a hindrance to it. But that might influence the price a little bit too.
Yeah, no, this is his final year. So that it'll end. So I know the St. Louis Blues historically had interest. I mean, Jake's name has been out there for a while. This isn't new. I mean, the trade request elevates, the priority of his availability. But I know that the St. Louis Blues were looking for something along the lines of what they paid to get Buchnevich from the New York Rangers. So that was Sammy Blais and a second-round draft pick.
Right.
Boston at the time, I think, was big game hunting. They were looking for Kyrou or Robbie Thomas or something like that. And St. Louis wasn't doing that. But as of Tuesday night, there were at least 12 teams that have inquired. Just kicking tires.
Well, you should inquire. Hey, maybe something pops up for you, and you go, hey, this is pretty good.
Yeah. Okay, let's keep moving. Jack Hughes, 8 years, 64 $8 million AAV. Interesting breakdown as the money gets less at the end of the term. Mm-hmm. So maybe by the time you're paying $7 million for Jack, he feels like a bargain at that point of his career. But there's been a little bit of bluster since this deal was signed just because of his production at this point in the National Hockey League. And, the fact that he's had some injuries that concern some around the NHL. What do you think?
All valid, but man, you're making a bet on these young guys, and the bet becomes, do I think over the course of the 8 years that I'm getting some or close enough to enough value, or if I sign to a bridge, am I going to get a mallet over the coconut in 3 years when he puts up 70, 75, and 80 points?
Yeah.
Then I got a real problem. Mm-hmm. And so the Devils and their staff, they're pretty analytically driven too. They throw a lot of stuff in the hopper, and this is what they come up with. And it's early. Yeah, you bet it's early to make this kind of commitment financially. But that's really their choice. Do we try to bridge this? Then what are you really hoping for? Are you hoping for him not to do well?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you want him to have 3 big years and then all of a sudden you're in big? I will say this though. There is zero chance that Jim and Ellen Hughes have Jack and Quinn Hughes on the payroll anymore. They are off.
They're not paying their cell phone bills anymore.
No, that's it. That should be the last screenshot and you're on your own.
No kidding. Well, you know what? I admire the approach of Tom Fitzgerald. He obviously has the ear and the support of ownership of the New Jersey Devils. You know, big game hunting on Dougie Hamilton in free agency, and now he commits to what he sees as the future in Jack Hughes at $64 million. So it's not Tom's money.
They're bold.
I mean,
they're bold, and so just think: $64 million on Hughes.
Yeah.
What was it? $63 million on Dougie Hamilton.
Yeah, it's up there. Yeah.
Yep.
It's a lot of dough, but
a lot of dough,
Two important pieces. Yeah. Matt Murray, we'll wrap up headlines with this. Man, he's just struggled in Ottawa, and he struggled in Pittsburgh before that. And then before that, he was winning Stanley Cups. So let's give him the benefit of the doubt here. Gets to a point in Ottawa where they healthy scratch him. And then the next day, he's placed on waivers, and now he's in Belleville of the American Hockey League. And I wouldn't call it mudslinging. I think that's sensationalizing. But, you know, Matt Murray, as now a veteran goaltender, obviously isn't thrilled with the direction or the approach of the Ottawa Senators, and didn't come out swinging, but you can sense the tone in his voice when you're hearing him say, well, I don't know what the direction is. I don't know what the timeline. There hasn't been any communication. How is this going to end, Ray? You know, is it just, you know, with a buyout? How is it going to end?
Well, I'm sure the Senators hope it ends with them trading him, taking some money back and moving him off the books. For the last 5 years, he's had a save percentage under .907. He said he felt like he's a scapegoat. The goalie's got to stop the puck. His save percentage is among the worst in the league.
Yeah.
He's had all kinds of health issues, injury issues. Man, it's just not worked in Ottawa. But you can say, okay, so they should move him. But he's got a couple of years left at $6 million. Yeah. Nobody's picking that up. Mm-mm. And so if you're Ottawa, you know, how much are you going to have to eat? Like if I'm the Buffalo Sabres, who each night use both goalies, which is never a good thing.
No.
You know, I say to them, yeah, okay, we're interested in Matt Murray, and here's a 5th round pick, and you keep half the money. Mm-hmm. And that's really the deal you're going to end up, you know, probably looking at in Ottawa if they make it.
Yeah. I wouldn't have called it a knee-jerk decision, but normally when a player is placed on waivers, the general manager, in this case, Dorian, makes his calls around the NHL to see if there is any sort of trade interest. I didn't get that feel around the National Hockey League. And so I asked the Sens about it, and the message that I got back was, no, you know what? We're trying to help him find his game. So, you know, whether that's just a narrative they're trying to steer or they actually believe it, and he's going to be back.
I don't know too many goalies of this age that go to the American League to find their game.
No. I'm with you. All right, those are your headlines brought to you by Boston Pizza. Our interviews this season on Ray Dregs are presented by our good friends at Canadian Club Whiskey, who are asking, are you over beer? Why not try refreshing CC ginger ale with lime next time you're having a drink or watching the game? We're going solo this week on the Ray Dregs podcast. No guest this week, Ray. So you and I are going to raise a glass of that sweet 44-year-old to each other. How is that?
Nice. I had a little 43 last night.
Did you really?
Yes.
It's a Tuesday, for heaven's sake. You just needed a little capper?
I'm not going to be home Friday.
Good for you. Yeah, and what were you? We were watching Yellowstone. Like, what was going on as you're swirling that lovely glass of 43?
I was watching hockey.
Oh, even better.
It was nice. It was
so just a sipper. Take the edge off.
Just a sipper, and the kids were doing their thing, and Cammie was doing a little work, and I just was like, had a little procedure on my ankle yesterday, so
no. Are you all right?
Yeah. This I've had a an long-standing issue that we're trying to correct. So
is that the same leg as the knee, or is it the other one?
Oh no, it's the other one.
Okay, perfect.
Like, might as well balance it out, while I'm at it.
I was just going to say, what's wrong with your people, Ray? If they're going to do the knee, they should have just done the ankle at the same time.
Yeah, no. So I think I'm headed somewhere. As you said earlier, we're just not sure where it is.
Cheers to that. Ray and Dregs, Season 3, Episode 10, presented by Infinity, continues. All right, time for Chris Abbott from Coolbet.co to join us. I believe you're back in Toronto, but man, you spent a lot of time in God's country, otherwise known as Saskatchewan. I hope you took so many big, deep breaths at clear, clean, crisp, cold, fresh air. But what about Team Epping and Team Homan? Those two sponsored curling juggernauts by Coolbet.co. What the hell happened? I almost put money on Homan and on Epping because of how hard you sold them the last time we had you on the podcast. Now, what is going on there, man?
Well, as you know, I am the unluckiest person walking the green earth. And I actually had to apologize to Rachel personally for
You're the jinx?
for what I caused. Yeah, because that's all I can figure. I mean, we all know how dominant she's been over the years. The last year and a half has been a little tough for Team Epping. They haven't been as strong, but I mean, Rachel's always been there, and they got off to a slow start. And in a field like that, there's just no coming back from it, there was some talk all week, even if you watch the final games, about the ice conditions, and it was really, really tricky. But like everyone out there would tell you, the teams that lose are complain about the ice, and the other teams think it's fine. So it's just a tough week for our teams.
And then you went from there to football, and you seem to have the picker's touch going right now, eh?
Well, the NFL is just impossible. I mean, I don't know how anybody ever wins money on that league. This week wasn't as bad.
Sean McVay. It is awesome.
You are a must follow now because of your snarliness and some of the picks and the goings on around sports.
Before I let you jump in,
well,
I'm scrolling through. I'm watching the Rams, and they go. It's early in the game. They go for a fourth and a yard. And they don't get it. It's like their own 32-yard line. And right away, his feed pops up. Oh, I love it when the smartest guy in the room isn't. It's like, it's just giggling away right away.
Well, normally I bet on the Rams, but it's been so frustrating. So this week, I was against them. And I actually thought that game was really, really odd that the Packers at home ended up as an underdog. And it didn't make sense. So normally when that happens, it's like, okay, well, what's going on here? And we knew Rodgers had a bad toe. But other than that, like how? I mean, the Packers have been the best team against the spread all year. And it's like, I figured something was really, really wrong. But it wasn't. I was actually right that time. But yeah, McVay, I mean, good-looking guy, popular. Makes some questionable decisions. Very, very questionable.
I loved it.
Because, like I said, he thinks he's the smartest guy in the room all the time.
All right, let's shift to hockey. Look, I was asked on Edmonton radio last week whether or not I believe that Leon Draisaitl is going to score 50 goals in 50 games. And I kind of stumbled and bumbled all the way through it, which isn't unusual. But 50 and 50 is a tall claim. So give us the odds on Draisaitl getting 50 and 50. And while you're at it, just put out the odds on Ovechkin to score 50. I feel like the Ovechkin bet is a safer bet than Draisaitl scoring 50 and 50.
Well, Draisaitl 50 and 50 is 39-1 heading into tonight. So that's pretty heavy odds. I mean, he's going at a pretty good clip, but at some point you've got to figure it'll slow down, right? I think it's worth, a few dollars. Why not? I mean, it's something to sweat for. The Ovechkin one is a little more interesting because the odds are even on both sides. It's straight up yes or no coin toss, just like a spread in a football game. So, I think it's like minus 115 on both sides or whatever it is. So, he's rolling. And I think I said to you guys before, it's Olympic year Ovechkin, right? He looks like he's getting primed up. So I think it'll matter how many he gets before the Olympics. We'll see what happens after.
I would say I'd lean to
Good
yes
stuff
on Ovechkin and no on Draisaitl. I just somewhere along the line, you're going to go no goals in 4 games or 3 games. It's going to happen somewhere, and then how do you make that up? I mean, it's not like when Gretz needed, had 45, and he's like, oh, I get 5 tonight. Like it doesn't happen too often anymore.
And it's funny that the Edmonton radio guys were asking you about that, because they're the same ones that asked us to put up the odds. They're pretty excited out there right now, and with good reason. Yeah.
Oh, with good reason. No, it's a fun team to watch, and 2 of the most dynamic players in the sport, period. Chris Abbott, good to have you back. Thanks for joining us, buddy.
Thanks for having me, guys. Talk soon.
Ask Ray Dregs anything. You can fire your questions to us on Twitter and Instagram at Ray Dregs, or on our website, rayanddregs.com. Ask Ray Dregs anything is brought to you by Tommy Gunn's Original Barbershop. Ray loved his time at Tommy Gunn's.
You could go there now, Dregs, and get that stash clipped off, and they could groom and maybe even do a little coloring into that.
Yeah.
Into that whitish area.
Well, look, it's the only place that I would trust to go to, because I'm assuming they use a straight razor, and I've seen enough country or cowboy movies over the years where Buddy puts a straight razor up near your jugular.
Nobody's slicing your throat, Dregs. Nobody's slicing your throat. You're living in a different time there, kid.
No. All right. Well, you're going to love your Tommy Guns experience. Tommy Guns is the official barbershop of the 2022 World Junior Hockey Championship. Oh, let's see. We've got so many questions. From Dave on Twitter, Ray, what is the general manager's role in communicating with players, their families, the media, and fans?
Well, it's all different. Yeah. All different, really. I mean, the manager has to control the message from the organization. The coach deals with the on-ice stuff. When your general manager phones you, it's never a good thing.
As a player?
Yes. No,
you're either being traded, or he's pissed at you about something, or your buddy's
sending you
traded.
down. Yeah. No, it's not good. You don't want, he's not calling to see what you had for dinner. There's really not much communication from the manager to the players about, certainly not about their play. That's for the coaches to dictate. And as far as the media, I guess every so often they have a State of the Union and talk about the team.
All right. Sticking with Twitter from Matt. No relation to Ray Ferraro. Should Vancouver trade Peterson or Hughes now? And then the point is, by the time they build up proper depth and a proper defensive core, they might be past their prime, being Peterson and Hughes. So he wants to know your thoughts. Feels a little early for me to be talking about trading Petey or Quinn Hughes.
Well, if he's worried about them being over or through their prime by the time they get really good, they're both 20.
Yeah.
That means you got another decade of slop in Vancouver. So the answer is no. But if I were in charge, and I'm certainly not, it would be time. Well, it was time before, but it's time again to start recouping draft picks, recouping prospects. They don't have any. Yeah. Their 2 best young prospects are Niels Höglander and Vasily Podkolzin, and they're both in Vancouver.
Right.
Like, who's next? No one. They don't have it. They don't have a farm system that's bubbling with prospects. And it is a tough spot they're in right now. But I think they have to look, if they're going to, I get his point, but the guys you got to look at are Brock Besser's on the last year of his deal. Qualifying offer is going to be over $7 million. JT Miller's got 1 year left on his deal. You're probably not going to be able to move Tyler Myers if you wanted to right now. So the older guys, those are the players you have to recoup picks with, but that's in direct contrast to what they keep talking about, which is to be relevant now.
Right.
You can't do both at the same time.
All right. Benny on Instagram has a Toronto Maple Leaf goaltending question, and he's saying, look, if you're Kyle Dubas, the general manager, do you engage or at least entertain contract negotiations with Jack Campbell before the end of the year? Makes sense to me. Joe Woll is playing well. I mean, he might represent a part of the future in goal for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Don't know enough about Woll just yet. And then what do you do with Peter Mrazek? I mean, Campbell Mrazek has to be the tandem for the remainder of this season unless something happens health-wise. But would you start by engaging with Campbell or just wait until the end of the year and take your chances?
Well, I would engage and find out what he's looking at. I think it's pretty obvious it's not going to be a cheap deal, and each week it goes by seems to get better and better. I mean, the guy has been flat out phenomenal. And now we're not talking about a 2 or 3 month stretch here.
Right.
We're talking about a long period of time. And
So
it's not
good.
just that not that he's playing well or winning games, it's how he's doing it. It's just so impressive. He looks terrific. They signed Mrazek for 3 years. They got him for 2 years past this. Joe Woll's going to have to wait. I mean, he played a couple of good games, but you're not going to bank everything on him yet. Even as a backup yet. You've got the other guys signed, and you got to get them back healthy, and you got to get them played. And there's no decision to be made at this point.
All right, diving into the Central Division before we wrap up Ask Ray Dregs Anything. Tip of the cap to Danny, by the way, who had a Minnesota Wild question. But we talked about the Minnesota Wild earlier. I think he's surprised at how well they're doing in the Central. But we touched on the Wild. So this question from Twitter from Larry, Ray. Do you think Paul Maurice's shelf life in Winnipeg is getting past its best before date?
I don't. I happen to think Paul's a terrific coach. I think he's found ways to reinvent himself and reinvent the way that he approaches the team.
Yeah.
Blake Wheeler doesn't have a goal this year. Mark Scheifele has not had a great start. The best of your team has not. Nick Ehlers has not been great. He's been very, very inconsistent, I would say. I would say if you're firing your coach, you better have in place somebody that's better.
Yeah.
And I'm really struggling to find somebody.
I say
so my answer is not even a consideration, Dregs.
I'm glad you said that, because every time a coach is put on a media hot seat or a manager, that's the first thing I always ask myself. Okay, who's better? Who out there is better? I also have it's more than a theory. I haven't asked Scheifele or Wheeler directly about it, but I do know that part of, that's going to be loud for a second. Not as loud as Ollie was earlier in the podcast, but
yeah, we had to edit Ollie out. He's gone.
That's all right. So Matt Murray is placed on waivers. Now he's in Belleville. He had a tough time with COVID, Ray. He had a tough time. Yeah. He had the legit symptoms here, and coming out of it isn't as easy as people think. And I believe that when I watch Blake Wheeler and I watch Mark Scheifele play, it doesn't look like they quite have their footing yet. And I think this is a bigger story across the National Hockey League than what is being told. And that's not a criticism of media. It's just if Ray Ferraro is coming out of COVID and he's not playing as well, his wind isn't there, just the effects of COVID, you don't want to talk about it every night.
Not only are you not going to talk about it, Dregs, but this is the same. I think it's instructive for people to think about when a player comes back from injury. Just because a guy is in the lineup doesn't mean he's 100%.
Yeah.
You expect it. You go, hey, he's playing. He should be at 100%, but you're not. And maybe these guys don't have the energy. They don't have the zip. They don't feel the same. Yeah. It's different apparently for everybody, right? I've been fortunate that I haven't had it. Yeah. But if I did and I recovered and I didn't feel well, I could still do my job.
Yeah.
I could still do this. They have to compete. And the difficulty in that is pretty obvious.
Not making excuses. I'm just throwing it out there as I think it's a real issue.
Sometimes, there's a fine line between an excuse and a fact.
Right.
And some things are excuses. Some things are just the way they are. And this very well could be one of them.
Ask Ray Dregs anything. Thanks as always. Look forward to episode 11 and a new batch of questions thrown our way. Check out Ray and Dregs' social channels for rapid fire. It is presented by netcoins.ca. Crypto made easy. We're going to have a little later this week. Dave Poulin will stop by for our rapid fire segment on the That's Hockey studio set, right? So
Ask Dave Poulin if he ever thought about offense before defense, because he never did, and it drove me crazy.
No kidding. I didn't ask him that. We've already recorded it. Yeah, I know. But I did ask him. I'll tease it. I asked him, who's today's player version of Dave Poulin? Now,
would he say Alexander Barkov?
No. He didn't.
If somebody asks, I think you should pick some crazy guy that's like way better. Like, it's Leon Draisaitl.
Well, take a guess. I mean, I guess you could throw out any name out there, but obviously you're talking about a good two-way forward.
Yeah, but Pooley would be so humble that he might not. Pooley, I mean, he was really good. I don't think people have wouldn't have any remembrance of how good Dave was. No. His style of game, though, was very Patrice Bergeron.
Interesting. That is lofty and not far off the mark here, but Patrice is not in a class.
I mean, Patrice Bergeron's a Hall of Famer, right? Yeah, he's a Hall of Famer, and he's one of my favorite. Honestly, Dregs, if I could have reincarnated myself as a player, he would have been one of them. No kidding. I just love everything about the way he plays and the way he conducts himself.
So should I tell you, or should we just leave?
No, you got to tune in.
Okay.
I want to find out when.
All right. Well,
get it up
there. Yes. Netcoins will provide us with our rapid fire with Dave Poulin a little bit later in the week. What's your week look like? We're Wednesday as we're recording this. Sure. What's the rest of it look like?
Going to Arizona tomorrow for Vegas, Arizona for ESPN. Saturday, I fly to Winnipeg for Sunday Jets Toronto.
Nice.
And then I'm in Toronto Tuesday and Thursday for Leafs, and Friday Washington Pittsburgh. So it's going to be a busy 10 days.
It is. You've had a few days at home, not many, but a few. Oh, yeah. Catch your breath.
Had Ollie out at 5:00 this morning, just what I was hoping to do.
All right, buddy. We'll travel safe.
Yep. You look after yourself next time I see you. Yeah. Mustache on or off?
It'll be off. Yeah, I've had enough.
Right.
We'll clean.
Well, good luck to you.
Huge shout out to our partners who make the podcast possible. Our title sponsor, Infinity. Thank you. Visit infinity.ca. Book your contactless test drive. Coolbet.co. It's the free-to-play sports and casino games website by our friends at Canadian Club Whiskey, who ask, are you over beer? ND.ca. Remember, use code RD75 and you will save $75 on a mattress. By Tommy Gunn's Original Barbershop. This is He Time. Save time. Check in with their app. And by Boston Pizza, where you get a free $10 promo card when you buy a $50 Boston Pizza gift card. That is episode 10 of the Ray and Dregs Hockey Podcast. Episode 11 will be chock full of all sorts of goodies, including a repeat performance from Ollie. Ray, be well, and thanks for listening, everybody.
Yeah, have a good week, Dregs. See ya.